I'll call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the City of Marshalltown City Council. We are in City Council chambers at 10 West State Street. The date is February 3rd, 2020, and it's 12 o'clock noon. The Mayor and City Council welcome comment from the public during discussion of any of the agenda items. You are asked to step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and to limit the time used to present your remarks to 3 minutes or less in order that others, may be given the opportunity to speak. All speakers shall speak clearly and direct their comments to the Mayor and City Council and not to any councilor specifically. It is at the discretion of the Mayor and Council to respond to specific questions and comments or to have staff respond during the meeting. So the meeting's been called to order. And if you are able, please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Cahill? Here. Gowdy?
Here.
Hoop?
Here.
Isom?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Weirin?
Here. Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to approve Resolution 2010-025, setting the public hearing prior to approving the maximum property tax dollars relating to specific property tax levies for the budgeted fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
One thing I'd like to know, it should be Resolution 2020, not 2010.
Of course. Yeah, 2020-025. Okay, with that correction, it's been moved and seconded. Any public discussion? Okay, we'll have roll call, please.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Hoop?
Yes.
Isom?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Weirin?
Yes.
Cahill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we are moving to discussion items. This is regarding the fiscal year ending 2021 budget. And the first item is long-term debt schedule and debt service fund. Mrs. Steiner.
Diana Steiner, Finance Director. So I did need to make one little change, so that's why I printed you new handouts. So let's get on the right page here. So the debt schedule for fiscal year 21 did not change. The change was actually in fiscal year 20. So here's your fiscal year 21 debt schedule. It lists the series number of the bonds, the amount of original issue, the type of debt, which is either general obligation or when it says no non-GO, that's usually the revenue bonds. The debt resolution number, the principal amount that's due in fiscal year 21, the interest amount that's due in fiscal year 21, the total of those two, and then the bond fees, which you'll see that some are 500 and some are 600. Our old ones are still at the 500 rate, and any new bonds coming on is 600. And then for the state revolving fund, they charge a percentage, so it's 1%. So that's why their fee's so much higher. So then we come over to this column J. So if it's not going to be part of the debt service levy, property tax levy, then we report the amounts here. So these make up either storm water revenue, sewer revenue, or TIF. So we back that off because we already have another source for those. So then column K is what we're actually going to be levying for the debt in these amounts. And then down at the bottom, you'll see that I took 78% of the local option sales tax for property tax relief. So we subtract that back off. So that leaves an amount to levy the debt of $1,162,475.
Diana,
Yes.
since I'm new, help me. So the fees are annual.
Well, they're every 6 months. We make an interest payment in December, and we pay a principal payment in June.
Okay.
So they charge half of that.
Okay, so
every-
that's the total annual.
Yes.
And then the 1% is on the original loan or on,
Well, this year, we probably won't have drawn down the money in full by June 30th. So it's however much is accumulated that we've drawn down this year.
thank you.
But yes, for next year, I'm assuming we'll be there or close to there.
Diana, I note that you state that the backfill funding is certainly unknown at this point. I think you took a conservative stance on that, did you not?
Yes.
Um,
We used 80% of what we thought we could get.
Jessica, do we have any feel for that at this stage with the legislature?
I would say at this stage, no. The governor's budget did not include any changes to it as it is, and there has not been any legislation that we have been made aware of where it would be reducing that out.
Okay, I just want to raise that point. Thank you.
Diana, can you please explain the red notation at the bottom left-hand corner?
So this is a standard budget form through the Department of Management that we have to fill out. So there's many, many other pages yet to be completed. So it's just telling me that I'm not in balance yet from those other pages.
Right. Thank you very much.
Are there other council questions on this topic you'd like covered? Or I'm sure you have more. This is
Yes.
just page one. Okay.
Yeah, this is page one.
Okay. Take it away.
So, in order to decrease the property tax levy, what you have done in the past is actually to contribute more towards the property tax relief through the local option sales tax. Or you could use the fund balance. So, like I said, this is the amount that changed here. So I'm including this 2019 bond series that you just approved in December. I'm including the interest and the bond fees for that. So that's $53,595. So that's why this number changed from your original memo. So at the end of this fiscal year, we'd have $126,000. Looking at next year, if we get the backfill, we'll be at $159,000. So to keep the property tax levy the same, we'd have to reduce by $173,797. So you could use part of this money, or you could use lost. The advantage of not using the fund balance is that as you make other bond commitments, you can always use this money to make the initial payment. For example, I did have Spear Financial run some numbers on what we were projecting for our fiscal year 21 bond, and the principal payment would be $136,000. So we could use this without levying any debt. I can't levy ahead of time because that would require a public hearing. We don't have all that time. So we can use this balance. Okay, we can come back to this, but I'd like to go through some other items here. And we will go through lost here in a minute. So here's the property tax levy sheet. If we did nothing else, if we contribute nothing else from the fund balance of the debt service fund or the local option sales tax, our new rate would be $15.57279, which is about a 19 cents increase. So on a property of $100,000, they'd be paying $19 more per year. If you did want to change to the same rate as last year. Then what we would do is we would come down here and show that offset against the debt service levy. And in this case, we're using lost, but you could use other things as well. So then that pulls this total amount lower, and so your property tax levy is lower.
Diana, can you state the number that would be required to go from the $15.57 to the $15.38?
$173,797.
And that's the total, that was that total number you just showed us.
Yes.
But that would not leave the 136,000 that you're saying would need to be the first payment if we levy again.
In this scenario, we're taking it out of local option sales tax, so the fund balance doesn't play
Okay.
into this.
So I'm hearing two decisions that need to be made. One is what to put the property tax rate at, and the other one, or what to set it at. And then the second is where that money would come from. If we decide to keep it lower, then would it come from the fund balance, or would it come from the local option sales tax?
Or a combination.
Or a combination. So I'm just curious what the local option sales tax money looks like.
Okay, we can go on to that
We're gonna
topic.
get to that? Okay.
So in the memo, I kind of outlined how local option sales tax, how we get that revenue. The state makes an estimate and gives us 95% of that estimate throughout the year. And then after the close of the fiscal year, they do a reconciliation, and then we get the other 5%. So unexpectedly, in November of this year, we got a payment of $385,000. So that is significantly more than what we budgeted. So then I went back and redid the figures for the local option sales tax, of which 78% goes towards property tax relief, and the other 22% is council designated for any lawful purpose that they want to use. And in the past, you have used local option sales tax, council designated, to buy down the levy. So there's several questions I have on here as well, but I would like to show you the spreadsheet just to kind of show you where we're at. So coming into this current fiscal year, we had $3.7 million in fund balance. Because of our payment in November for local option sales tax, the reconciliation, we're now budgeting $4 million. So 3.1 goes to property tax relief, and 880,000 goes to council designated. And then we have some interest income throughout the year. And then these are the $2.4 million under property tax relief. That's what we had originally budgeted last year, which when you approve the budget, we automatically transfer. And then you also put in $390,000 for the fund balance that year. One change I would like to make or suggest is that last year you put $110,000 in from lost council designated. You don't really need it out of council designated anymore, so you could switch it over to the property tax relief. These other items in black are just items that you have already approved, so I put those in there. Another change is that you had approved a transfer of $50,000 to the cash flow reserve fund. So we like to have at least 15% of our general fund expenditures on hand. So with the recalculation of all of our entire budget for fiscal year 20 for the general fund, we don't need as much. So we only need $17,227. So I changed that number. Last year, the local option sales tax council designated was going to kick in $8,611 to get us in balance of our general fund. Again, we're not projecting that we need that, so I took that out. In November, December, you approved the city planner position. We were budgeting $27,914 to come out of this calendar year, or this fiscal year. Again, because of re-estimating the fiscal year 20 budget, I don't think that's needed, so I zeroed that out. So skipping down here. So at the end of this fiscal year, these are the balances we're looking at, about $778,000 for the balance in property tax relief, $1.4 million in council designated, and $1.9 million in capital projects. So then we come into fiscal year 21, what we're budgeting now. So I'm estimating $3.4 million. Again, that's based on my conversation with the Iowa Department of Revenue of what we could expect in fiscal year 21. So again, you have your 78% allocation for property tax, 22% allocation for council designated. You'll have some interest. $2.6 million will be used to buy down the property tax levy. And then these are other questions that I would have for you is, do you want to continue to fund the cash flow reserve at 15%? If so, we need $60,314 for that. And then based on our discussion last week of the general fund, we were short to balance that. So we would need $61,778 as you directed to take it out of local option sales tax. The Edgewoods extension, you saw that in their capital improvement plan, and you approved that. And then the other item would be the tornado costs. So if you recall our FEMA expenditures, they'll pay 75% for the federal, 10% for state, and the city is responsible for 15%. We did have donations, so that would be applied toward the 15%. So this is kind of what we're expecting to be short. Now, they could disallow many other costs, and then we would have to come up with 15% more of that, or the full 100% of whatever costs they disallow. So that number could change, but best case scenario, $120,000.
What's the timetable on the FEMA?
We're trying to basically get to the point now where we're closing out the projects at the state level, which means the state then submits it to FEMA, and then they basically go through it at that point. So our largest one has been submitted, which was our debris cleanup and the weeks.
Citywide.
Days and weeks and a few months after the tornado. The rest are still in a state where they can't be submitted yet. There's been some issues or errors that we need FEMA to correct before we can ultimately submit it for closeout.
So we're not going to have this resolved before July 1st.
I think there could be some things that'll be resolved, but the one thing where Diana's note says doesn't include Cat C Street, that is a separate funding category for a street project which is being planned for the northeast side of town. So that one certainly won't. It'll still probably be, that one probably won't close out until sometime in 2021.
It's hard to say whether we get paid or not. I mean, it's in the hands of FEMA. They can take
Do you
3 months to 2 years.
Do you even have a feel for this $120,000? I mean, is it
Well,
going to turn
that's-
into $200,000? Is it going to turn into
It-
150?
The area where I feel like we're not the strongest is in the donations that we submitted, and I think that's going to be the easiest area for them to say that we don't have the proper documentation that they were looking for, and for them to disallow things. Otherwise, I feel like everything else is pretty well documented in the processes that we used, that we should be good. But it's the donations is the wild card, and the state's role. They basically said we're here to just say what you submitted, ties out. Everything, your documentation ties out to what you submitted, and we're going to pass it on. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is how much more money do we need to earmark, worst case scenario? Because if we start spending lost money and then this FEMA thing falls through, where's that money going to come from?
Well, you're still sitting with, even after using the $120,000 towards FEMA, you're still sitting with almost $2 million in council designated. So a year from now, if I'm coming back and saying FEMA disallowed this many costs, now we'd like you to contribute or come up with another way of funding the shortfall.
I don't see our liability on that being opened by too much, especially with the amount that's ultimately there. You know, our biggest one is the one that's submitted, and so we'll know probably in the next 3 months or so how scrutinizing FEMA is on things. So there's probably some transactions in there which, you know, we don't meet the documentation to the T of what they're looking for, and it's just how flexible are they going to be, so.
Thank you.
So several discussions, I guess. One of them is, are you wanting us to try and get back to the property tax level, debt level for fiscal year 21 as it was for fiscal year 20? Are you wanting to make us constant debt service levy, property tax levy? Are you wanting to lower it? Are you wanting to not put any more local option sales tax in it and just let it ride, increasing it 19 cents? I need that question or answer or whatever. And then I have some specific local option sales tax questions for you.
Before we get into that, so I need a little history lesson here. We went, was it 75, 20, and 5 was how we designated lost?
Right,
Yeah, that's
Okay,
correct.
so 75
property tax
went to
relief.
property tax, 20 went to streets,
Capital project.
Capital projects.
Yeah, it was.
and then 5% was any legal.
Council designated.
And so then it went to 78, 22.
Right.
Historically, when did it start that we either told the public or we decided as a council that we would actually give more than the 75 or the 78%, you know, to keep that level the same? I mean, because like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're taking money that we could use for projects to artificially keep a property tax from going up. I mean, help me understand where this came from. That when was the decision made that we're going to keep property tax at the same rate every year?
So that's just a policy decision that's part of every year's budget process. And so it's something that we bring forward as options every year for the 7 of you to consider how you would like to treat that. And historically speaking, last year we weren't able to do that. You know, we went from 1528 to 1538, and I think we had 2 years prior to that where we were able to do that. So it's always been out there as an option. If you would like to exercise that option, we can show you ways in which that can be done.
I think, let's see, this is my 6th time through this whole process, so I believe every year what was it, through 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we put that to the public to change that percentage.
Right.
And typically, we've always used that money because those are the people that put into that fund, or is the public. And probably if you ask 100 people what their biggest concern is, and social media will prove this, it's property tax. And so we utilize this, and if my figures hold, if you go to the corner at 2.782, and you buy that down at 173,797 plus 160,551, which is the 15, which is probably another question that Diana has, the increase from 15% to 16% on the cash flow reserve. After that, you're approximately at 2.4 million left over, still left in the local option sales tax. So I understand the concern, but you also have to realize that we're buying that down to keep it at that level and still have 2.4 million at our discretion. So it seems like it's a lot at 173, but it's really not in the scheme of things, because typically if you go back the next 2 or 3 years, what we've taken out of the local option sales tax is very minimal compared to the total that we're bringing in. And if I remember, as we tried to sell this to the public for a yes vote, was along some of these lines, plus different things that we've put in for cameras and different things that we utilize this money for advancement. But that's kind of a short
Yeah.
synopsis of why we've always done that, because that's normally when you ask the public, it's always taxes. Doesn't matter what category you're in, it's going to be taxes, and how can we lower them? And that's a kind of a synopsis of.
Thanks, Mike, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, because what you're saying is 173,000 is nothing to lower someone's tax, it's nothing for us to move that money, put that burden on the sales tax users.
It's kind, yeah,
But, it's like,
paying them back, so to
Right.
speak.
and for 173,000, we couldn't do a lot of capital projects. But I see what you're saying, it's the bigger bang for the buck.
Yeah, and earmarked for the, also, when it was 75 percent, which was, and we used that 20%, we found that the 20% was the same thing. It was a small number that we could not do those capital improvements at 3 or 4 million a year. So we go and bond that out. And so, in our infinite wisdom, we decided that we could use that 22%. So that's, and it's working. It's not that it isn't, but I understand the concern. It's just kind of synopsis of what I hear from the public.
So, it is restricted to property tax relief. We can't pick it up and use it for anything else.
Are the, I'm sorry. And again, remind me, the percentages, those are set without any movement on our part, 78% for.
Right, that was voted on.
That was set with the bond.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
thank
not
you.
with the bond,
Or
with the referendum.
Referendum, thank you.
Did you want to change that, Sue?
No, again, going back to your question of we're taking it out of one, and it's like, I guess the question would be, okay, do you raise it up to 80%, 80-20 rather, or redistribute it if we're doing it anyway? And like I said, I didn't know if there was movement in that or not.
I would just say it's probably not worth holding a special election, which has a cost of like
You got a point there.
$13,000. So, I mean, especially when that is what you're all doing, and that's what we're bringing forward to you, is that there is that council designated, which you can use for that purpose.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation, thank you.
And just another comment is we've tried to keep the property tax rate pretty much the same. We don't like spikes up and down, because then public's upset every other year when you got to spike it. So we're trying to keep it a little consistent. But again, it's up to council's discretion.
I think too, just thinking back about valuations, whenever valuations have increased, which they just have, we try to keep it the same number because
Right.
it's still a tax
Going to go
increase.
up,
right.
It's still going to go up.
The rate stays the same, the dollars go up.
Does the public really understand that, though, or do they just come back to us and say we raise their taxes?
I don't know, I just told them.
Yeah.
If they hadn't noticed, I noticed
Well,
valuations went up.
right, and that's a two-edged sword, because we look at it as like, great, that just based on what we have, that is going to increase our
Revenue.
the collections by the city and our other entities. But on the back end, I may be paying more taxes, and so I would suggest that we really work to not raise our tax, the amount. I would get to the point that we know people will have increases due to their property being valued higher. And we are getting the advantage of that for our properties, and I love with the budget, the parts of keeping our transit down. I mean, we've had many places that we do not have an increase. So we're at a good opportunity that it shouldn't show tremendously, because we have some areas of savings in the budget, as it has been explained there. So I would think if we could keep it level to where we were, I would certainly be in favor of that.
Are we at a point we need a motion to do this?
Do you have more that you want to cover
have
before?
more?
we-
Well, I have the other questions, such as.
I would
okay.
say for purposes of,
Okay.
this is the big one that needs to
Yep.
answer first, because it'll then, how you answer your local option
Right.
sales tax question is going to be based on your answer to this first one.
Would you like to make a motion?
So I would make a motion to do the 173.
From local option
Yep,
sales tax?
yes.
173 and
And-
some change.
And that's in order to keep the tax rate level.
The same as last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I would second that motion.
Okay. Is that clear? Mrs. Steiner?
Just say council designated property tax relief.
So a motion by Hoop, a second by Cahill to buy down the tax levy to the same as the current fiscal year, utilizing local option sales tax
Property tax relief.
for property tax release.
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
Sounded just like that.
In the amount of,
173,797.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other council discussion on this?
This is Gabe. Just for clarification, that's coming out of council designated or the lost property tax relief fund? Which one of
Property
those?
tax relief.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Did you
So-
hear that question out there? So Mr. Isom asked if it was coming out of the council designated fund or the property tax relief fund. And you can see at the bottom, right, you're showing it coming out of the fund balance of the property tax relief.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
So back to the current fiscal year.
Oh, we need a vote.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go.
Do we have any
Is there
public
any
comment?
public comment on this issue? Okay. All right, we're going to have a vote. Roll call, please.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Thompson,
yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy.
Yes.
Okay, that passed. And next, on to your questions.
So fiscal year 20, we approved 110,000 to come out of the lost council designated to buy down the property tax levy. I'm saying you have money left in the property tax relief now due to our sales tax increase, local option sales tax increase. So we'd like to shift it over to that column. Use the property tax relief money rather than the council designated money.
I would think on this one, if, we probably wouldn't need a formal motion in a second if this is just generally
Just to move it.
agreeable to everybody.
More of a housekeeping than anything else, right?
A finance director recommendation.
And then the transfer to the cash flow reserve fund for this fiscal year 20, you originally approved 50,000. We're going to change it to 17,227 based on our amended budget for fiscal year 20. I'm assuming that's okay. We don't transfer it unless we need it, so.
Sounds good.
Again, we don't need a motion for that one,
Right.
right?
Sounds like it.
Same for the general fund operations. You originally approved 8,611. We're going to zero that out. And the city planner position for 27,914, we'll zero that out.
I'm seeing heads nod. Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Can I
let's-
ask one question on there? Why
Sure.
are the airport designs on that sheet in a
Different
in
color?
Orangish color?
so if you're trying to reconcile it back to the capital improvement plan, you'll see the 60,300.
Thank you.
So coming into fiscal year 21, cash flow reserve, do you want to continue to maintain that reserve at 15% in general fund? That would be 60,314 that you would contribute out of council designated.
Or the option would be to go up to 16%.
Yep.
Why give me rationale for the 16%.
Well, our cash management policy says our goal's 20, and we haven't been able to get there. So I thought maybe an increment at one at a time would maybe push us there. Again, it's in a
Let me ask you a
reserve
question,
fund.
I guess.
Oh, here comes Mr. Isom. Yep.
So I have a question. If our goal is 20, and I know that's the rainy day fund, I would consider the tornado a pretty rainy day. Is 20 realistic as far as an overall goal, or is that just a lofty goal that we set out there and one hope that one day we'll hit? I mean, is 15% realistically a good number, and maybe we should adjust that 20% goal? Or I guess I'm just looking at that. I would say that the rainy day fund, if necessary, would have been used during a major catastrophe.
So we have pooled cash, so all the funds are in one checking account, basically. So that rainy day fund does help during those months when, right before property tax comes in, in August and September and February and March, when our cash flows dip down, that rainy day fund does help fund those items. So it's up to you.
The other thing that having that reserve really does for us, whether it's 15 to 20%, is anytime we do our bond rating, that is something that they look at, that we have that much money on hand, which could be used for something. So I think there's a practical purpose, like you mentioned, Councilmember Isom, and then there's more of the theoretical purpose of what having that amount of money on hand does for us.
Do you think there is a difference in our bond rating review, whether we have 15 or whether we have 17 or whether we have 20? I mean, we've gotten good bond rating reviews with our current status of 15.
Well,
is that correct?
Yes, but we also had, $6 million sitting in road use tax, and we had quite a bit of money sitting in local option sales tax. So as we spend those down, you'd want to raise the other one up to keep a healthy balance of cash overall
So
for bonding.
when you say things get tight before property taxes come in, $100,000 makes a huge difference to the city?
Well, we don't go negative in our general fund.
At 15%.
Yeah.
Hey, Gabe, were you thinking 100,000 is not what you want to do right now? I guess I didn't understand where you're going with that.
I don't know. My question is,
Purpose of-
I get to buy down the cash reserve. I mean, and I guess from an overall bond rating, I guess I don't really get that aspect of it, being that if we want to be conservative with regards to cash on hand versus bonding, well, if you don't want to bond, like, we have quite a bit of, I mean, to put it blankly, $2 million sitting in the council designated fund if we want to decrease the borrowing request if we have any moving forward. I guess I don't get the difference between 15% and 20%. And the justification or requirement to do that outside of moving the number a smidge. I mean, does moving to 16% make any bit of a difference to our bond rating? I mean, do we have an estimated impact if we were to borrow X dollars and move it from 15% to 16%? Are we just talking pennies here with regards to being safe and conservative? Or, I mean, I guess I just don't get the point.
So I would say that probably going from 15 to 16% is not going to change our bond rating for the better or the worse. I mean, when you look at how consistently we have been an AA2, and when you look at what is it that, are the potential negatives and the positives, those have been consistently the same. So that's probably 15% is still going to be 15%, and that's going to be something that they highlight about as a positive of the community. I don't think that that piece in and of itself probably changes their formula and equation so much that it would increase our bond rating.
Do you think the 60% self-imposed limit does more for our bond rating than anything else?
Probably. I mean, I don't even know if we really even talk about that, because ultimately they're looking at what is the city's ability to pay, and with an unrestricted debt service levy allowed under Iowa code, we always have the ability to pay. They do look at what is our debt ratio, and so, I mean, but they're not, I don't think we've never even really talked about there being that 60% threshold with them, so.
I guess I'm like Gabe. I understand where you want to go with this, but that we are so close to our debt cap right now and everything else going on and not knowing about FEMA and everything else, I think that $100,000 needs to sit in that 2.4 million rather than go if you're not going negative at 15%, I'd like to keep it there.
That's fine. I'm just bringing it forth
I mean,
as an item.
I want to know what everybody else thinks, though.
Well, we're not following our cash management policy. Apparently, we said 20%. I don't know if that changed from 15 to 20. I know we
It's-
changed the cash management
it's
policy
been
in the last
20 for
15
a
years,
while.
but it's
But
been
why-
20 for a while.
Yeah.
Why
been able
was
to
it, though? What was the
maintain
rationale to change? Was it just an,
It might not have changed in the last I know we changed our policy in the last 15 years, but I don't know if we changed that aspect of the policy. And then I wonder how long, did we ever have 20%?
We
in our
actually
cash
had
flow.
two different areas where with two conflicting things. The cash management policy said one thing and our code of ordinances said another. And with our ordinance codification, we removed that. The ordinance, I believe, said 15%. Cash management was always 20%. And so, but that policy can be amended by all of you at any point in time. You can tell us to put it on the next agenda to be amended down to 15%. So we're there. So policies can be amended very easily.
well, I guess to quote Gabe on some earlier discussions, is there any scientific stuff going into this, or are we just throwing a dart at a dartboard and picking numbers? I mean, I think Gabe was trying to make the point, not to put words in your mouth, Gabe, but where did the rationale come from to go to 20%?
I think this really does, when you look at kind of where that original ordinance came from, it stems back to the Iowa Trust Fund scandal. Because it was like in the early 90s when that originated. And so I don't know the whole history. We didn't go through the whole history, but just looking at the timing on things, that's really when that was implemented and put some pretty heavy restrictions on what it would take from all of you to be able to access those funds as well. So, but that was also a time where you didn't really have much fund balance available and that you were trying to strive for something. And so I think it's more of a, if your goal is to get to 20%, or if our goal as the city is to get to a 20% fund balance of the general fund, do you do it in one big chunk or you do it incrementally? And Diana has put down the option of, here's what you can do to stay at 15%, but if we want to start moving that needle towards 20%, here you go. But the impacts outside of the organization of moving that needle are going to be variable and might not actually change something from where we are today.
I mean, Moody's, when they do a bond rating, they don't have a magic number that they're going to tell us, but they do like cash on hand. So they're looking at your latest audit report, which is June 30th. So by having a restricted, we're usually in a pretty good balance. But again, for the entire budget that's going on, we are spending down road use tax. We are spending down some local option sales tax. So those go down. So in order to keep it maintained, that is an option to put money in the cash flow reserve. We can't spend it without your permission, and the public would have to have a public hearing before we could get any of it out to spend. That's just the history of it.
In the cash flow reserve, that's
Mhm.
how it works.
You have to have a public hearing, yeah.
Okay,
So the more money we
So-
put in cash reserves, the less access we have to it.
yeah,
Immediate access, right.
right.
Wow.
So, but on the whole, it's either sitting in our council designated fund,
Mhm.
or it's sitting in a restricted cash flow reserve fund.
Right.
So it
Earning
still will
interest-
look like
yeah.
$160,000 no matter
Right.
where it sits.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, earning
Yep.
interest no matter what, it's just how, I think you hit on it, it's how liquid do you want it to be, how accessible do you want it to be for all of you?
I would make a motion that we remain at 15%.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion from the council, by the council? Is there any public comment? Okay, we're ready to vote. Roll call, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Okay, that passed. And are there other decisions?
Well, you basically decided this already at the last meeting, but I didn't know if there's more discussion that you would contribute the $61,778 to keep our general fund 001 fund in balance. There was discussion about McTV, but you directed us to use local option sales tax.
Any other comments on McTV or anything? Okay.
I'd like to comment. I think the sunset is coming. On the one hand, I really like the access that MCTV has provided, and it's been a quality type of dissemination of information, positive news, and so on. I'm really wanting to get the city out of TV production and so on, although we've got a franchise, we've got some franchise income. I'm only afraid that any new platform may be more restrictive and less used and less appreciated than MCTV. So, but I'm saying that we've got to make a move on this. There's money involved no matter what.
So are you making a motion right now to change that?
No, but I want it to be
Okay.
actively considered. And
Okay.
the reality is, it's reality.
Maybe for next budget year, you're saying?
Oh, it's definitely then.
Okay.
Well, I guess I would like to see us move forward with these new cameras and the city streaming it and everything. I guess I look at McTV as, that's a $40,000 investment we're making in public relations for the city. Just like we're paying the chamber $50,000, we're paying Vision Marshalltown $7,000. I see this $40,000 as, you know, we gave them a vote of confidence last meeting. Let's work with them to let's look at their schedule. What are all the events that they're going to put out there? It's more than just the council meetings, and I think that's what we need to focus on. You know, I still think we should move forward with the other direction, you know, and if they still want to do their part of streaming too, we can double up on that. I don't have a problem with that. But I think we really need to get the biggest bang for the buck out of that $40,000 and really have them promote Marshalltown. That's what I see it.
Well, I think when Gabe and I moved that forward to do that, it was with that in mind. And what that did was give us that initiative to move those questions forward and get us, I did that to get us off the dime. We were stumbling with that. And so with that motion to go ahead and bridge that, so we all have time to study what the changes are, what BDH could do for us, and also what MCTV does for the community. So that was kind of in the background of what we were doing. It was just let's get past this budget season or session, and then evaluate where we are. And that's basically, I think everybody had that in mind, but we got caught up in what ifs and really not knowing what anybody else could do for us other than the budgeted cameras and stuff. So that was my thought, and I think that was Gabe's thought. About putting words in his mouth, but I felt that's where we needed to go to give us some time.
Yeah, and Mike, all I'm saying is let's just not stop with, giving ourselves more time. Let's move forward with them.
Correct.
To get our investment out of them.
Okay.
And Diana, you have one more on your list, right? Did we approve the 120?
The tornado transfer?
Well, just really quickly, I heard that we're leaving that transfer to general fund to balance the general fund. 61,778. Leave that the way it is. Okay. And you have enough direction on McTV and BDH and cameras and streaming and all that stuff. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Next.
Sorry,
So yes, the
That's okay.
the
I just wanna
tornado.
Close it out.
Are you willing to contribute 120,000 towards the city share of the tornado expenses?
Do we have an option?
Yeah.
I mean,
We will. I
We'd
think.
have
I mean,
to-
we will do this, right?
This,
do our part. It might
this
be more
is
than that.
this is the best funding source that we can come up with. I mean, as we've talked about the general fund, there's really not anything there. I don't think this would be something that we'd want to tap into the cash flow reserve for, but you certainly would have that option. So that's where, when it comes down to level of pain and ease of doing, this is truly the easy option to bring forward to you.
Okay,
I think it makes sense.
okay. Okay, I'm seeing nodding around the
Do you need a
table.
motion on that, or is that just direction?
I need direction.
Direction.
You want a motion?
No, I can
Oh.
use direction. It's fine.
Jessica,
think
do we need a motion?
I would say if you're fine with that number, ultimately, it's just kind of a best guess at this
Okay.
point. And as we said, it would flex and change. So this would at least give some budget authority that we have to work with. And as things change throughout the fiscal year after July 1st, then we can talk further about it.
So as we put the budget together, any money that we're transferring from one fund to the other will be presented to you, and you'll bless it. And then we have the authority to make these transfers throughout the year.
Sounds good, okay.
But I think, it being new, in fairness to me, I need one sheet that shows me what's, like once a month, what's available in that lost. Because we're pulling a lot of money. I know there's 2.4 million, we're carrying over, but there's a lot of money we're pulling out of there all of a sudden. You know.
So with with their monthly financial reports, you do get sort of that bigger balance. It's probably more quarterly when we try to, pull some things, but capture ultimately what has been designated by the city council within that period of time. So we do try to keep this as kind of a running list of things that you have designated. But Diana's probably too kind to say this report takes a lot of time to prepare because it's not just something we can print out of our financial system. It then has to be done in Excel because of it's 3 things in one fund, basically 3 designations in one fund.
Quarterly reporting. Good to know. Thank you. Okay, anything else that we need to do today? Did we get it all
Not
accomplished?
for me.
Great.
Thank you.
Are
Thanks,
there-
Diana.
Thank you,
Thank you
Diana.
very much. Oh,
It's not
yeah.
the touch screen.
Thank you. No. Okay, all right. That looks like that concludes our business for today. And thanks for coming, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you. Have a good day.